How to create content blocks in StoreConnect. Hi, I'm Luke. So content blocks are the building blocks of the content on your store's website in StoreConnect. So let's learn about what they are and how you use them.
Okay, so let's firstly talk about content blocks, what they are and how they work. So for example, this is the homepage for Steve's Emporium. Now this page here is actually made up of two content blocks. The first content block is this banner area, followed by a second content block which has featured products in it. If I go to the About Us page, here we have a single content block which inside it holds an image and some text. And again, if we go to the contact page, we have a single content block here which has a web to lead form and an embedded Google map. So let's look at how these are constructed. So in the back end in StoreConnect, I've got my pages list view, which has all the pages on my site. And let's firstly look at the home page. So on the left side of the screen, we have the basic page details, such as the name of it and which store it belongs to. And then in the page content, there's a little bit of code here, which basically indicates to the page that it will load and render content blocks. In most cases, you can leave this as is and simply look to the right side of the page, which is where the content blocks themselves are created. So under the related heading, we have a list of every content block which is on this page. There are two. You can see here there's the banner and then a homepage container. A container is basically just an empty content block which can hold other things inside it. And here where it says position, it's just the order on the page that it displays. A lower number means it will appear closer to the top, and a higher number means it'll be further down the page. So now looking at the banner section here, let's see how this is constructed. I'll open the content block, which is banner, and now I'm in the record for the content block, which is the homepage banner. Across here we have the different parts of it. Firstly, we have the content template, which is basically the visual style of this content block. If we click edit, you'll notice there's a long list of them. And this one is set to image with text overlay. And that's exactly what we're seeing. We're seeing an image with some text overlaid. If I click into the settings tab, you'll notice then that the alignment is set to right, which means that the text will be to the right side of the banner. And then here we have link label, which is shop now, which simply renders a button with a label and a link. In the media tab, we've then assigned an image from our media, which is the image which is displayed. And then finally in the content tab, we have the title and its subtitle. And that's the entirety of how this particular content block has been created. Now, one of the useful things about content blocks is they can be created one time and then reused as many times as needed. So over here in the related area, you can see any and all pages which this particular content block is being used on. Whereas in this case, it's only being used on a particular single page. If I wanted to, I could assign this to as many sections of the website as I wanted to. And if I wanted to create even more detail in this content block, I can create child content blocks. A child content block goes inside another content block and can add more depth or features into a single content block. So let's look at another example. Back on the home page, I'll then click on my homepage container. This is an example of a container which contains a child content block. What I'm referring to is this section here. The container is simply an invisible box which then holds other content within it. So here I have my homepage container and the content template of it is container, meaning it will just hold other content. And here all other settings have just been left blank because the visible content is now inside it as a child content block. And that is the homepage products. So if I open this, the content template for this one is featured products. There are no other settings necessary for this because then simply in the related area, I've then assigned products from my product category to this content block. You can see the 4 products here and the order that I've arranged them as, and they come up exactly as this. And that's the simplicity of how this basic homepage has been built. Another example, if I go to the About page, so here's the page. Let's see how it's built. I go back to my pages list view, open the About page. Here it has a single content block inside it. It's a container. Again, the container is nothing in itself, but within the container, I then have another content block, which is the About Us image and text. And the template for this one is image beside text. The homepage had an image with text overlay, but this one's slightly different. So I select that. In the settings, I've also included a button, Explore the Shop, which renders in this style. Then in the media, we have the image, which appears here. And the content has the title and all of the rest of the text. And that's the simplicity of how this one's been created. Now, one of the reasons to put child content blocks within a container instead of just putting it straight onto the page is that a container can add padding around the sides. Whereas on the home page, this top banner section is not in a container, and thus you can see it stretches all the way to the sides of the page. But if these featured products were not in a container, then these would be stretching and touching the sides, which don't look visually appealing. But by putting them into a container first, you can better control their layout. So that's the basics of how content blocks can structure your website. Now let's say I wanted to create a brand new one. I'll go to the About Us page, and if I wanted to add some more detail to this page down below, here's how I do that. Go to the About Us page, you'll see the About Us page container here, but now I can go New. And from this drop-down list, you can select any content block which has already been created. Thus, you can reuse content blocks more than once. Or you can go New Content Block. So I'm first going to start with a container. Because this first section is in a container, if I make the second section in a container as well, then it will maintain the correct margin and padding. So I'll first create a container. I'll just give it a name, something which identifies it as different than another container. And that's all I need for this. Click Save. Now set the position. Now to ensure that this goes below the other content block, I'll make this as a higher number. Click Save. And back on the About Us page, we can now see that we have our second content block here. So now I'll go inside this, and within this container, I'll then create a new child content block. You'll here see that the parent is going to be the container, and then it allows you to select or create a new child content block. So I'll create a new one. This one's just going to be a single image. So here I can select single image, give it a name, and under image, I can search for and select my brand logos, which I want to display as this single image. Then click Save. Then click Save again to make the connection. And that's done. So now within this second container on the About Us page, we now have a single image which displays a set of brands. So now let's refresh this page. And boom, there we go. The visual rendering of content blocks is also variable, depending on the theme which is being used in your StoreConnect store. You can also create your own themes for your own StoreConnect store, which is covered in the Theme Developer course. And that's the basics of using content blocks on StoreConnect.